Second segment, Kyle's gone. Coach Darrell Hazell is here, and we're glad and welcome. We hope to the first of many appearances on Gold and Black Live. We don't want you every week because we know you have. we take you every week.
But what could be more important?
Nothing more than having Coach Darrell Hazell here. Brian Newbert, far to the right. We are looking forward to. We're looking at the courthouse there. I know that's not our screen. So, Coach, welcome to the show. And we kind of asked you on the side here. Well, have you been busy lately? You've been busy.
A little bit busy, trying to complete the staff and trying to find a place to live and all those other good things. But it's been great. It's been excellent.
Fire away with that class of 2013 stuff.
Just what strikes you most about this class you just signed?
Just
what do you like most?
I think the thing that excites me the most is the wide range of athleticism. There's a lot of great athletes there that can do a lot of different things, so it's going to be exciting to watch how they develop and where they end up. But you see guys that can run and guys that are physical and guys that are athletic. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and you have 20. You said 23 letters out, 23 letters in. Were there any nervous moments on signing day in terms of just you never know what's going to happen until you get them all in, or did it all just go to Hoyle?
No, I thought it was pretty smooth. We got the last letter in at probably 12 o'clock or so. The first one came in about 7:04, 7:05. That was Keontae Green. He was the first one to come in, but no, there was never any anxious moments.
Yeah, and you like them when they're eager and they're up at 7:05. That's
exactly.
a good thing. Absolutely.
I'm kind of curious, when you don't know your personnel you have right now as well as you'd like at this point, do you recruit the systems, or are you just trying to get the best players possible those last couple of weeks?
I think you got to recruit numbers for those positions first, and then you try to get the best available players. I think that's the two things that we looked at least, and I don't know if that's the perfect scheme or not, but that was the approach that we had to take.
You know, you look at it, and we're getting all kinds of questions here in terms of when you look at guys, and Brian kind of hit that. But which position do you think will initially be open to some of the freshmen playing early? Again, you haven't had really a chance to evaluate your talent, but as a broad stroke, do you look at even in your past experiences? Is it quarterbacks, receivers that tend to see the field first, or is there no rhyme or reason really to that?
You know, I don't think there is. However, I think the position that could probably help you the quickest because of the amount of the things that they don't have to learn is probably running back.
Yeah.
But it's going to be wide open in the springtime. We're going to have competition at every single position, and we're going to let the best players play.
Yeah. Does that make it fun for a coach, or do you? I mean, in terms of just having the slate white clean and you get to create whatever you guys can create?
You know, every single day the coaches evaluate what the guys are doing out on the field, how well they're learning, how well they execute. All those things. So that's the fun part for us as a staff, and it's constantly changing. It's never the same.
Yeah. You're obviously going to, every single recruiting class you recruit every year, I know you're going to emphasize character, but when you're taking over a program, is there a component to a first class where you want them to, kind of fit into that template you're looking for off the field as well as on the field, where you want them to kind of set the tone a little bit?
That's the number one thing we look for, guys that are going to do things the right way and represent us well on and off the field. So that's the number one quality that we'll look for before athleticism, before grades, is a guy that's going to be respectful to others and make sure he's doing the things that we're asking him to do.
All right, we get strange questions from time to time, but what was the most interesting meal you had on your recruiting circles when you don't have to say necessarily where it was, but what was the meal that you remember most from this tour and this quick tour of trying to get guys to commit, but also visiting all the guys that had already committed?
Well, I'm not a big seafood eater, so when you sit down and have to eat some seafood, it's always hard. But I've had some great meals on the road, and it's always good because you're living out of a hotel and you're eating fast food and junk food. So anytime you can sit down with a family and have a great home-cooked meal, is nothing like it.
You have a good natural smile, so I know you're not a faker, but you do have. There are times when you got to go with the flow in that situation.
Absolutely, you got to find a way to get it down.
There you go.
What's kind of protocol in recruiting? If somebody puts something on your plate you absolutely refuse to eat, and you don't want to offend anyone in the room, like if somebody just put a squid on your plate or something like that, you didn't want to eat it, can you politely decline, or does that run the risk of costing you the kid?
I think you got to try to eat it. You're going to try to get the squid down.
Anything you can to get the player, right?
That's exactly right.
Whatever it takes.
Within the rules.
Within the rules,
That's right,
correct.
within the rules. And you look at that, and looking back at the timetable and what happened, you're hired on December the 5th, and you go and fulfill all your duties at Kent State and get that done. Now having at least 5 weeks, 6 weeks to look back at how it transpired, how did it work in your view?
You know, it was hard. That was a hard transition, traveling back and forth from Ohio to Indiana every couple of days and trying to not cheat either program. That was a hard thing to do, and you wanted to do the best job for Purdue at that point in time. You want to do the best job for Kent State at that point in time. It was a little harder than I thought it would be, but it all worked out, and it's going to be great going forward.
How did your kids at Kent State react to, I mean, they obviously have a great deal of affection for you and respect for the job you did, but how did they keep a stiff upper lip through that entire process? And playing a game, you know, the GoDaddy.com Bowl was obviously a game that went down to the wire, didn't go your way, but there's a lot of emotions there that you have to deal with.
There really was, and there's such great kids over there, and they've come so far in such a short period of time. And, you know, anytime you have to sever ties like that, it's hard. And you find a way to get through it.
Yeah.
Speaking of relationships, we talked a little bit at the press conference the other day. Obviously, when you recruit guys, you want to know them in and out. You want to know their family. As you said, you want to know the family dog. Obviously, when you take over as late in the process as you did, maybe you don't have that opportunity to build that relationship. Is that uncomfortable in recruiting, doing that? Or do you feel like you had enough time to really strike that bond with guys?
Well, I think you like a lot more time than what we had, obviously, but you do what you have to do with the short period of time. And I like to know the dog so he doesn't bite me. I can call his name when I walk into the house. But no, as much time as you can spend with the family and getting to know the brothers and the sisters and the ages and all those things, it helps you communicate when you get into someone's house and they feel like, hey, this guy's invested in me.
Now, you just want to know the dogs. If somebody gives you something you don't want to eat, you can slip it under the table,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, this has been a lot funnier than I had anticipated, which is a good thing. Question, I'll throw this one out. What's your philosophy, broad stroke, on redshirting in terms of offensive linemen? Do you have positions? I mean, historically, that's typically where it starts, maybe an offensive defensive lineman, but do you have any philosophy, or are you, as you said in your press conference, you're going to evaluate what you have?
I think the biggest thing for us as a staff, we tell everybody to come in ready to play and get your mind set right to play, get your body ready to play, and then we'll make a decision as a staff after camp's over and maybe even 2 or 3 games into the season. Hey, if you're in the too deep, you're probably not going to redshirt. But if you're not, there's a good chance that you might redshirt. But we want them all to think like they're going to play coming in.
Kind of a broad stroke question here. How do you want to win games, and how does this class fit into that template?
Well, you know, I want to be a tough football team. I want to be a disciplined football team. I want to make sure we take care of the football. And that'll be the #1 thing that we preach as a staff, is making sure we win that turnover margin. But I want to absolutely be a team that believes in themselves in the last 3 minutes of the game, the last 4 minutes of the game, no matter what the situation is, to learn how to finish football games.
I'm going to ask a question because I always wonder, how do you guys, okay, I buy that. I think that's the key to winning anywhere. How do you figure that out in the recruiting process? What are certain things that tell you? Is it the guidance counselor? Is it the teacher? Is it the parents? I mean, are there any indicators you say, almost like in a job interview process, you know, I know that's something I got to have?
Well, I think there are certain guys out there that are natural winners and fighters. And those are some of the things that you look for. But you have to instill that in the whole football team. And from the first guy to the 105th guy, they all have to believe the same thing. There's a minute to go in the game, you're down by 4. How are you going to win the game? But they have to have that belief system in place. And that's something that we have to do as a staff to make sure that gets across.
Yeah.
Just to get to some questions
Yeah.
from fans here. Got some people getting restless because I'm talking too much, probably.
Yeah.
Who are a couple sleeper recruits? I don't know if you ever think of the term sleeper in your evaluations, because I know you probably view everybody on a relatively even plane, but are there any guys in this class maybe you think got under-recruited or maybe aren't didn't get the sort of attention that you figured maybe they should?
Well, I think if you look at Johnny Daniels, he's a guy that I think is going to be a great football player. He's a little bit undersized right now upstairs. He's 255 pounds, 250 pounds, very athletic guy, and a guy that can rush the passer. Probably the other guy is Desjuan Polk Campbell, the linebacker that's a little bit undersized. He comes from a program that they're well coached, but he's not getting the nutrition that he needs and all those meals that he needs and the weightlifting that he needs. But I can see those two making leaps and bounds here in the next couple of years.
Polk Campbell is one that is interesting because I thought that one of the storylines, obviously, and we'll be writing about it in our next issue, is the Ohio kids. And here you go into Whetstone High School in Columbus, and get a kid. How big? I mean, obviously you have many ties there, but that's something I assume you're going to continue to really use to your advantage.
There's so many schools in Ohio. That's where it starts. I can't remember how many schools there are in Ohio, but there's so many schools. And obviously we're going to go in there and try to get the best players we can. And like I said before, I want to take 75% of our class from this area. 200 miles from here, 200 to 300 miles. I want to take 75, and then we'll go and pluck a guy from here down in Florida, Georgia, Texas. But the 70, I want Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, a little bit from Kentucky, and I think we can build a pretty good class year in and year out from those states.
Yeah.
Where do you get the other 25% from? Will you go to the Southeast? Will you go to Texas?
Well, I think you're going to get one or two from Florida. You might get one or two from Georgia. I'd like that I-95 corridor where you can pluck maybe one or two guys. So that's probably the other 25% of our class.
Okay, we get a comment from Eric Johnston. Coach, the alumni are very excited to have you at Purdue. How do you continue the cradle of quarterbacks legacies? I could answer that, but I'll let you.
Well, that's from Eric?
Yeah.
Eric, I think the thing that we got to do is obviously teach him the game and be efficient with the football. We're going to throw it, and we'll throw it as much as we have to throw it, and we'll throw it in uncommon situations, which always keeps the defense off balance. But those guys have got to do a great job of protecting the football, be precise with their reads, be precise with their throws in those critical situations.
The prospects, the possibilities of having to play a freshman or a redshirt freshman, or again, we're not giving the job to anybody just yet, but what are the challenges with that? I mean, obviously experience being one, but you can, what do you have to do to get those guys ready as fast as possible?
Well, I think they're all the same to us because no one knows the system. So they're all young players in our mind. Obviously, there's been some game experience by some of the older guys, but they all have to learn, what our formations are, what our calls are, all those things that a new quarterback needs to know.
Just from a systematic standpoint offensively, it seems like obviously you took the 4 running backs, you got a lot of redshirt freshman offensive linemen, just the importance of being able to run the football. You used the word physical quite a bit on signing day. Are you looking at kind of like a pro-style offense, kind of run to set up the pass, or is that sort of up in the air still?
Well, I think not really. I think that it's cold outside right now, and it's hard to throw and catch in the cold. But I think if you can present your will in November and December by running the football, and we're going to throw it, obviously. You have to throw the ball as well. But I think if you can impose your will on people by running the ball, that'll set a tone of what kind of football team will be.
Another question from Tom. He said, Coach, what do you think of Urban Meyer's recent comments that the Big Ten needs to step up their collective efforts in recruiting?
Well, I don't know much about the comment, Tom, but I'm sure all the teams are working extremely hard to get the best players for their program to be successful.
Good answer.
We have a question about Twitter. Will you use Twitter? Will your players be allowed on Twitter?
Well, I'm not a big Twitter guy, and I've been asked several times to go on Facebook and Twitter, and to be quite honest, I probably should get with the times. I don't know much about it. Well, our players, it's hard to keep them off of there.
Right.
I caution them to go out and put our business out in public. So we'll watch it. We'll monitor it pretty closely.
Comment from Hammer Down. Now, they don't always give you their first name in this deal, but
you don't think that's his name?
I don't know. That could be Hammer. Is it Down, comma Hammer, or Hammer, comma Down? I don't know. Love the staff's enthusiasm and charisma, especially Freeman, Marcus Freeman. Is it easy to identify players who down the road would make good coaches?
Are you asking how we identified Marcus?
Well, Marcus, and also ones that even guys that you can look at from this team at Kent State and say, I bet you he's a good coach someday.
You know, that's a great question, but I think a lot of times you see how guys prepare as players and how much time they spend in the meeting rooms and the film rooms and their attention to detail. And I think there's some translation between that and potentially being a good football coach. Now, Marcus is a bright guy. He connects so well with our players. The linebackers are going to love him. He's really a really detailed guy.
Also a good football player.
And a good football player.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt. And not too far removed from doing that, so the kids will have an idea of who this guy was.
Right.
Just to go back to the class real quick, there's a question here. Which recruit was the most gratifying for you to recruit this year? Was there one that stuck out more than others? Anybody maybe you really wanted or you really had to fight to get?
You know, I hate to categorize one guy over another guy. I like a lot of these guys, all of these guys, obviously, but personalities and characteristics of the different guys. You look at Replogel's family is just an amazing family, just great people. But you go through the list, and the whole families are excellent. Panfill and all those guys.
I'm a little bit curious about Jake Replogel. You go into that house, they've got two kids playing at IU. I mean, was that an interesting dynamic talking to them? Obviously, he committed long before you took the job.
Correct, and maybe that's why they kept me out of the house. I actually met with Mom in the school and Jake in the school, so that's probably, now I look back at it, that's probably why they kept me out of the house.
Didn't meet that dog, huh?
I did not meet the dog, no.
Probably named Hoosier or something.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying not to take all the questions that Stacy and I talked about wanting to ask here, but no, I actually talked to Jake's head coach this morning because we're looking to gather pictures, and I said, is he as good as advertised? And he said, not Jake, and Coach Hazell as well. And he said, this guy's really a special kid in terms of coming to a place like Purdue and having a great deal of success because he's going to have that work ethic.
Oh, he's got a great motor and smart and physical, and he's going to be a giant. You see how, I mean, he's big. He's got a big head. I mean, he's going to be a great player for us. I'm excited about him.
Yeah. It was hard to contain. It was just interesting talking to the guy this morning that the whole feeling that, you know, again, this is Central Ohio is football country. I mean, as much as any place really anywhere, and yet, you know, there's always this talk about the Southeast and obviously the great players that come from there. But you can make a good living, and Ohio State and other schools have recruiting well in the state of Ohio.
Well, there's no doubt. Like I said earlier, I think there's like over 700 or 800 high schools in the state of Ohio, and they're so well coached. I think that's where it all starts. There's some great football coaches in the state of Ohio. And I'm sure there are as many in Indiana as well, but you know, it's and they get a ball. That's a tradition I was thinking about the other night, that we ought to start giving Indiana boys when they're born footballs in their cribs.
Yeah.
So let's start that tradition.
All right.
All right.
You got a chance for one more question before we shoot you off, Brian. Go ahead.
Dalen Dawkins said that you compared him a little bit to Dree Archer. Do you see him being that sort of player that you can use in a lot of different capacities?
Absolutely. I think those two are very similar, where he's quick between the tackles. He can hit a sweep for you. Mm-hmm. You know, for as small as he is, if you're watching in pass protection, he's excellent. I mean, he'll step up and stiff someone, but you can also put him in the slot and let him operate out of the slot and do those things to get matchups on safeties and linebackers if they're not going to change personnel.
All right, we're going to let the coach. I actually bought him a water, just in case he needed some in between break. It's a whole $1 I spent on you already, Coach. But Brian, we'll thank you for joining us, and you can text us in other questions in case you have some for Stacy to ask.
I think she can handle it.
Yeah, I think she can too. We'll stay tuned. We're going to ask you to stay tuned. We're going to stay tuned, and we'll be back in a couple minutes on Gold and Black Live.
Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
Check out the Purdue collection now at Follett's. Boiler up with Nike Fantastic T-shirt. League and champion fashion colors. Simply fabulous. Simply Follett's. Purdue pride everywhere on game day. Nike sideline, worn by the team, by the players, and by you. And make every day game day with tailgate toss. Follett's, Purdue pride. A Purdue tradition. 17 game day locations.
Good driver? We've got a discount for that and a lot more. See State Farm agent Trent Johnson to make sure you get all the discounts you deserve on your car insurance. Saving you money? It's just part of being there. Call or visit Trent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Stacey Clarity joins us, and she's going to have some spellbinding, riveting questions. In addition,
no pressure.
No pressure, though. In addition to the ones we have here, we are going to take care of a little bit of business. The Hilton Garden Inn, one of our fine sponsors, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. I can guarantee you Trent is taking in all this event, maybe not live, but I'm going to guess that he's going to watch the replay later. And then, of course, Follett's Purdue Pride, another guy, Jeff Julich, who is very in tune with Purdue football, and that's part of the reason why they're involved with this show. But, Coach, after you've survived the first segment and we've had some fun with this, but talk about the move to West Lafayette and what that's been like and where you are in your house gathering process and getting your family here as soon as possible.
Well, we haven't had a whole lot of time. Been out of town for the 3 or 4 weeks that we've been here, but we're still searching every night online and trying to find the best possible place for us to live, and we'll get the family out after my son finishes the 6th grade.
6th grade, that's a good age, and actually not a bad time from a transition standpoint if he's going to make a move. Stacey?
We talk a lot about changing the culture. What does that mean to you? I mean, are there ingredients of that, or what? When you say that, what do you mean?
There's lots of ingredients. It's everything from coming into the room with the right mindset, with taking your hats off, from how you prepare when you're studying film, all the little things that make the difference when it's a critical situation on the game. There's a lot of ingredients for that.
Are the guys doing a good job of not wearing their hats now?
Yeah, so far I haven't seen many guys walking around in the building with their hats on. If they forget, we'll quietly remind them. But and that's a good point because it's a learning process.
Right.
I mean, they've done it for a certain way for so long. Now here's a new way of doing it, and we'll help them make the adjustment.
Do they have to dress a certain way? At the press conference on Wednesday, the guys had ties on.
Well,
right?
We'll travel in coat and tie, and because it is a business trip, and we'll always try to look sharp and classy.
They get their lead from you, right?
I don't know about that.
I'm fascinated by your philosophy, though, towards in trying to instill discipline. You impress me as someone. I'm sure you can raise your voice and do that at the appropriate time. How do you do it quietly? You appear to me to be somebody that might be able to do it quietly but forcefully. Is that your MO? Is that how do you try to get done, or does it depend how well they listen to you?
Well, I think it's very important that they understand what the expectation is. As long as they understand the expectation and they are told when they don't meet the expectation and they're told when they meet the expectation, I think I'm not so sure that you need to be a crazy man.
Fair enough.
Because we're kind of talking about those rules, we learned that O.J. Ross was suspended indefinitely. Do you expect him to be in spring ball?
We're not going to comment on that right now.
Okay.
And we've had a couple questions about that. But what about the opportunity now in spring practice is going to start. You talked about the date, March 19th. Is that right?
Yeah.
And spring game still set for April the 13th.
Yep.
Talk about your schedule with spring practice and will you do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or how do you see it?
Well, we're going to start off slow. We'll probably go the first 2 weeks. I believe we have 3 practices the first 2 weeks, and then we'll try to install the system as quickly as we can. Try to front end load so they get all the terminology, and then we'll go back and continually review all the things that we're not doing as well as we should be. But we want to set the tempo of speed and efficiency on the practice field and execution.
In a challenge for you, because you're the coach of coaches, and it's part of your role certainly, and you have guys, obviously guys you've worked with, guys that you've gotten to know, obviously, and the 7 that you have to date and the others that you're going to hire. How big a challenge will that be for you to get everybody from the professional coaching staff to be able to come together as a unit?
Well, that'll be the challenge, probably the first week, to find out what my expectations from the coaches are, how we handle practice, because some of those guys we haven't coached before together. So we'll work through that and make sure that they understand that, you know, we don't have time to go back and run a play again. We'll coach it off the film, but we want a serious tempo while we're out there on the field.
Yeah.
You want to break any news about the remaining 2 coaches?
Yes, actually I do. I'm going to interview one tonight.
Are you?
Yes.
Hey, there you go.
Right.
I didn't think that'd work.
And you're excited about it. He's coming
I am.
tonight, so good.
I am.
The look in your eyes is priceless, Stacey.
I was like, wow, okay, sure.
But and you have guys obviously with different personalities and from a coaching standpoint, but you've worked around different personalities. What do you look for in a guy that you hire? Somebody that is obviously has got to listen to what the boss says ultimately, but also has to be able to forge his own pattern as much as possible.
One of the things that I do when I try to evaluate who I'm going to hire and who I'm not going to hire is I ask, what is their coaching demeanor on the field? And how do they teach? And are they out there just screaming just for the sake of screaming, or are they getting their point across because they're great teachers and they can articulate it while they're out there? And that's one of the biggest things. They're all smart guys. There's a lot of great football coaches out there, but I need someone that fits my style on the field. I don't want to be out there cringing because they're screaming and using foul language all the time, especially when I want to have kids out on the practice field to be able to watch those things.
I had heard that you don't swear very often. Is that true? At least on the field or in meetings?
Very often. Where did that come from?
Just talking to former coaches and teammates of yours that...
You can get your message across without using foul language.
One of the things that a lot of the former players for your assistant coaches have said is they still talk to those guys, whether it's 10 years later and they really kind of became father figures, and that's something that's been really important to you in this process as well.
Well, that's the best thing about this profession.
Yeah.
Having those guys that have played for you for so long, always reach back to you and try to strike up a conversation, and we revisit things that have happened 15, 20 years ago, which is always fun.
Yeah.
You know, looking at this team and as you start spring ball, you're going to find out a little bit about the personality of your team, about how well they perform in the weight room and how well they get prepared. And you talk about preparation. How long will it take you, do you think, to get a real feel for the personality of this football team? Do you hope that happens in spring ball, or do you have to give it enough time to see how they work out over the summer and come back in the fall?
Well, we're going to start our 6 a.m. workouts on the 18th. And we're going to find out a lot about our football team those 3 weeks. We'll go 9 sessions of 6 to 7 o'clock a.m. workouts, and we'll put them through the paces and find out where we need to go from there.
Is that open to media that's trying to train at all? Kyle said he wanted to join you if you would.
Well,
if he gets a waiver signed, that's true, from his physician.
We'll gladly host Kyle for the first one. I'm not sure he'll make the second.
He's pretty good, but you may be right. I don't doubt that part of it at all. Looking at spring ball too, what's your philosophy? The question about the spring game itself. How do you like your spring game to unfold?
I wanted to play like a game. Obviously, the biggest thing is to come out of it healthy, but I want it to be exchange of kicks because that's such a big part of the game. I want us to play hard, and you're so thin in terms of numbers because you're dividing the team up, and you don't always get the true picture of how good or where the improvement needs to be because you're playing. Because we'll have a draft.
Yeah.
We'll draft the team, and we'll have the seniors do the draft, and but it's hard to get a gauge of where you are coming out of spring. So you want to get out of healthy. You want to make sure you get as many plays as you can, but it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I had seen that you sold, the program sold about 1,000 new season tickets on the very first day they went on sale. I mean, I'm sure that sounds good to you. I mean, what do you need to continue to do then to, keep the enthusiasm up and keep people being interested and wanting to buy those tickets?
Well, I think it's important that we do get people in the stadium. I think the passionate Purdue people that want to see us succeed, we need them in the stadium. And I'm going to continue to drive it home in the fraternity houses, sororities, and get out on campus and visit those people to make them understand that we need you. And it's like I said in my initial press conference, it's about all of us. It's not just about the staff or the team, it's about the whole Purdue community.
Because you have a whole list of events that you're going to be doing over the next month or so, right?
I do.
Excited?
I am. I'm very excited.
Fraternity house, huh? Right?
Exactly. Several of them.
Aren't you doing something with the paint crew today? And you're trying to get to all facets of people that can support your program. What does I got a question here on what does Darrell Hazell do on his 5 minutes of downtime per year? What do you like to do if you weren't a football coach? What would you do? You think?
I'd be a hostage negotiator.
I think you'd be a good one.
I like that job. But I really enjoy playing chess. And matter of fact, who was it? Corner safety from Florida. I'm drawing a blank. Or signing from Florida. Help me. No.
Logan?
Logan.
Yeah.
What?
No.
Austin. You're talking about Logan,
Okay,
right?
go ahead.
Austin, I went to Austin school. Sorry, Austin, for getting me. I went to Austin school, and we're walking around, and he's introducing me to everybody, and he's a phenomenal kid. Love that kid. And we go over to his house, and he's saying in school, "Can you play chess? Do you know how to play chess?" So we ended up playing chess at his house on the home visit, and it was a pretty good game.
Yeah, who won?
Can I ask who won?
You can ask.
Okay.
But I won't answer.
Well, that's the right answer.
To some of these questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Are you pulling them out?
Yeah, what do you want? Is there something you're looking for specifically?
No, go ahead. Fire away. We'll just sit here and be quiet.
I'm
We can-
looking.
No, that's all right.
You've done some of these.
Yeah. What about?
There are a lot.
One question is we've kind of gotten to a fair number of them, but who meant? You obviously are a big believer, or you appear to be a big believer in mentoring and sending the right message. And I think you talked a little bit about that at your opening press conference. But who do you look back? Was it your high school coach, your college coach? Who kind of formed the person, helped form the person that you are as much as anyone else?
I don't think I could put my hand on one person. There's been so many good people that I've been around in the last 27 years that really helped develop me as a person as well as a coach. And you go back to the head coaches that I've worked for, but there's also been assistants, but the head coaches I've worked with, Jim Tressel and Al Bagnoli and Al Moldy and Bob Sutton and all those people, just brilliant guys that can see things from different perspectives and allow you to keep your mind open and not be so narrow-minded.
Yeah. Jim Tressel obviously had a lot to do with your upbringing into big-time college football. What characteristics does he bring to the table that most of all that was your main takeaway from a guy like Jim?
Well, the one thing that stood out to me about him is on the sideline when things were at that critical moment, he would always come up with a great decision at that particular time.
how do you clone that though? How do you make that happen? You just is that a divine thing? You have to be. Is it a function of being prepared enough?
Yes,
and
that's
and have to
exactly right. I think it's because of all the film work that he watched throughout the course of the week. And it was funny. I like to study film by formations. I study all the offensive formations, and I build tendencies in my mind. He never liked to do that. And I asked him why. He says he used to study the game film as it happened. And he'd like to see how the whole game played out, as opposed to I would watch all the formations where there was a 3-by-1 set. So I know that when we're going to get that formation, the percentage of this coverage or this front was here, which allowed me to say, okay, this was what we should do. But he wanted to see the whole game, how it played out, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yeah.
I know you talked about offensive philosophy a little bit with Brian, but if it's essentially a West Coast offense kind of style where you just have the first read, the second read, the third read, does that play into then having younger quarterbacks? Would that help them? Is that kind of a benefit to that style if you have a bunch of younger quarterbacks?
Well, I think it's perhaps a little bit simpler to be able to go 1, 2, and 3. But I think the physical part of being able to flip your hips and have yourself reset to ready to cut it loose to the second read or the third read are the important things.
Okay, so I did find a question I don't think was asked. Are you doing football camps?
Oh yeah.
Was that asked?
No.
Oh, I was like, geez, Alan, I thought I was paying attention.
We are. We're doing many football camps. I think we're going to do 5 of them. We're going to do a quarterback camp. We're going to do a 7-on-7. We're going to do a 6th grade through, or 6-year through 8th grade. We're going to do a 9th and a 10th, and then we're going to do 11th grade. And then we're going to do an elite senior camp. And all those dates are going to be online this week.
Okay, great.
All right. I know there's some people out there talking about that. A very simple question, and now that you've been here here, I guess, in one form or another for a whopping 2 months, why Purdue?
A lot of reasons, but the two reasons that jump off one is the education here is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I was talking to someone the other day, and I think they said they were in Tokyo, and they said, oh, so many people over there know about Purdue, but it's a world-renowned institution for their education, and that excites me. But the other thing is, I like the challenge of taking a school that's been in the middle for so long to the top, and that's what drives me.
Okay.
Along kind of those lines, Brian from Missouri asked, when you set your goals for the upcoming season, do you set them at the top possible accomplishments, like winning titles, or do you focus more on moderate goals, winning seasons, player progression, bowl game appearances?
Well, I think you have to convey the message to the team of, here's our objectives, and if it's Big Ten championship and it's Rose Bowl and all those things, I don't think you can be afraid to talk about those things. But through the process,
right,
you got to work on all those other little things.
Right.
Another good question. What have you taken? This is from Kyle. I don't think it's from Kyle in this room, but we don't know that for sure. What have you taken from former Purdue football players that you will institute into your program? Anything yet? I mean, you've obviously met some alums and some guys that one being Drew Brees, obviously during the Heart of Dallas Bowl. But what have you heard from the former players, and anything that you want to institute into your program?
Well, I think they're all excited about the program right now. They want to see this thing take off, and I welcome all those guys back. We can't get those guys back enough around our players, those guys that have experienced the success. And like I said, I want those guys to come back in the summer. I want them to train with us, get around our guys, and let them know that Purdue football is going to be pretty special. Yeah.
Are you going to do helmet stickers? It's so random, but you guys did that at Kent State, and they have done that at Purdue in the past. I'm just curious.
We are.
God, we got a scoop here.
What are they going to be? Little hammers?
We won't tell you yet.
Oh, we got only half
a scoop.
I know this sounds horribly analytical, but is football simple? Is football a chess game to you?
It is.
Have you been playing chess since you were little?
I have. My sister taught me when I was 5 or 6 years old,
wow,
and I love it. I mean, I really do. I like the 3 or 4 moves ahead thinking process and philosophy, and it's fun.
As a head coach, how much do you have to get in the mind of the guy across the field? Do you have to really know what decisions that guy's going to make in certain situations, or can you afford to spend that much time on that?
Here's the one thing I'm going to tell you about coaches. When things aren't going right, they usually revert back to what's gone right in the past. So if you study them long enough, you'll figure out, we're in a tight ball game. This is what's going to happen. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time that happens.
Yeah, studying human nature, that's for sure. Stacy, anything else that you want to ask? We're getting down to the last
Billy
couple minutes.
asked, what is your favorite part of game day leading up to the game?
The national anthem.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
It's just, after 9/11, and maybe it shouldn't have been that way, but that day changed the way I feel about them playing the national anthem. It's just, it's a very emotional time during that game. It's special.
Yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of that, and a great tradition that is obviously the national anthem, and it hasn't always been at sporting events. It hasn't been since we've been alive, but certainly traditions at Purdue, and every school has them. Purdue has its share of them as well. Anything that you've seen in your short time here that you say, boy, I'd like to build on this tradition. Outside of the quarterbacks, I'm not going to give you an easy out on that. So, I mean, what any other traditions you've seen yet to date that have captured your fancy at this point?
Not necessarily, but we're going to study those traditions. We have a book in our A Players Manual that have a tradition section, and I'd like to build on that. And really, I have to study all the traditions. I have not had time to do that. I'd like to study all the traditions and see what we can really make take off.
Yeah. Last question, Stace. What do you else?
What's next for you? Recruiting, obviously you're going to do 2014 and all that stuff, but now this kind of big chunk is done, and you have the interview tonight, and that's the next step, is completing the staff?
Yeah, I have to get these two guys hired here in the next couple of weeks because we started talking about football a little bit the last couple of days. They're putting together the notebooks, offense and defense, and special teams notebook. So we'll need to hire those other two guys. And then the biggest thing is we got to get around our current players. I just don't feel like we've been around those guys enough and get a chance to know those guys and what they're all about.
All right. Well, we've enjoyed it. We could go on for another hour, but I'm going to guess you're booked. So we're not going to do that. But, Coach, thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed it very much. I want to thank everyone at the WLFI, and from Gordon to Lydia to Kim's not here today, but Kevin's in the back. Kurt's taking pictures, and we even have an audience today. Appreciate everybody that put a part of this together. We'll be replaying this. If you didn't see it all, we'll put it up on our website. It'll also be on WLFI.com. Very insightful interview, and we're going to look forward to watching things grow here in the next weeks and months, and leading up to August 31st when it all starts against the University of Cincinnati. So thank you to our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn and Follett's, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to talk a little bit about Purdue tickets next week with Chris Pellidat, and also we'll be filling in a little bit more on basketball on Down the Line. It never stops here on Gold and Black Live. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.